So, me and Spino, aka David Sherratt, are not exactly on good terms right now. We've had several public Twitter spats. He's said some callous things to me, I've said some callous things to him, and my sort of contention with Spino is that he has handled himself in a way where he has presented a narrative as if he is always the victim, always the one that has been slighted. He's not willing to accept any kind of constructive criticism from anyone, whether that be from people who are highly critical of him or people that are even his friends, from people such as myself, who used to be a former friend of mine, and even people like Sturkle. But he's made a thread which I think is a very interesting read to sort of delve into, because this is what you should be doing more of, Spino, for starters. Even though I don't agree with a lot of what you've got to say in this thread, this kind of thing, this kind of discourse, this way of trying to address the problem is far better, is a much better approach, as opposed to trying to put other people down solely for disagreeing with you and trying to essentially mock people for not having the same opinion as you, because that's noxious, that's toxic. That is not how a community, effectively works. You don't mock people for having a different opinion to you. You respect people's opinions. You don't have to agree with them. I'm not saying that you have to agree with anyone that you're having a discussion with, but you don't undermine people, for saying something that you perceive as stupid. You try to understand why they're saying that. Where are they coming from? Instead of being an arrogant prick towards people. And I understand that I've not been exactly an angel. And to be honest, I've sort of gotten wrapped into the anti-Spino hate wagon a little bit myself. In the same way, I've been associating with a few people that, despise you. And I think in the same way, you've been associating with a few people that despise me. So I think we're both equally to blame in that facet. We're associating with more and more people that are more sort of convicted that we're bad people. And I think that's skewed our perceptions of one another. So I can understand why you've suddenly sort of turned against me as of late. But I've always been there to defend you from unjust criticism. And I've always been, I've put my arse out. People like to mock me for saying that, but it's true. I've really stood by my convictions and tried to defend you from unfair bullshit. I have made videos on this second channel, even on my public channel, trying to defend you from what I perceive as unjustified criticism, and I still see a lot of it as unjustified criticism. And then you treat me like crap. Why should I be incentivized to continue associating with you when I defend you from this criticism, when you treat me like crap for my opinions and how I articulate myself and the people I associate with? It's quite legitimately, it's incredibly duplicitous. But I'm just going to respond to this thread. The anti-SJW community is so fucking toxic. Well, yeah, parts of it are. I criticize parts of the retrograde right. I criticize, I even criticize parts of the more sort of rational skeptic variety. I think that we sort of overlook issues such as the negatives of issues such as Trump and Brexit. We sort of get in the mindset of thinking, oh, well, they're the lesser of two evils, so we must not, criticize them at all, because that just gives ammunition to the S-Jews, Like, we treat the social justice kind as if they're the worst people in the world, and they're not. The progressives, the social justice warriors, if you want to call them, they're not the worst people in the world. It's just that they conduct themselves with malice of intent in the same way that a lot of people on the right conduct themselves with malice of intent. That is the reason why we are at odds with them, I feel. Not necessarily because they're wrong, because there's plenty of people who have preconceptions that are incorrect, that I have, you know, a lot of respect for. You know, Zexacy, for example, I don't believe that his conclusions are correct, and I will talk to him about them, but I respect him because he's willing to come on and discuss them with me. That's why I have no respect for someone like Tom Bloke, because he's not willing to put his money where his mouth is, theoretically. And that's why I don't have respect for the other social justice YouTubers, many of them. You know, there's still some of them that I don't mind, like Tim Blake, Kevin Logan, Christiosity, Ranting Feminist. You know, those ones seem more open to discussion and civilized discourse. And I'll give credit where credit's due to ContraPoints and H-Bomber. You know, they put their ideological differences aside with Shoe on Head and Armored Skeptic, and they had brunch together at VidCon. You know, that was a genuinely good moment. I'm glad that they got together and put their differences aside and just socialize like normal human beings. You know, that's something that we need more of. We need to sort of realize that there are other human beings at the end of the, you know, at the other end, if you know what I'm saying. So if you criticize a large figure, a lot of friends will turn on you. All ethics go out the window when outgrouped. I'm assuming he's referring to Sargon, and yes, there is admittedly a very sort of defensive mentality around Sargon. I admit that criticizing Sargon, in order to do it effectively, you need to be very articulate, you need to be very concise, you need to be very... in order to be taken seriously, you need to be very eloquent in how you do so. And unfortunately, Dave, I don't think that you're quite as articulate and eloquent and diplomatic as you like to believe on this front. You burn bridges, quite simply. You know, you're not as what's the word that I'm looking for? You're not as civilized as you sort of like to portray yourself to be. You know, you're very brash, you're very sort of naive as to how the world works, and I am in many ways as well, but I have a degree of self-awareness in that regard, at least. And yes, it's unfair that in order to criticize the right that you have to make more concise critical criticism, whereas to criticize the left all you have to go is say lol Jeremy Corbyn, lol Diane Abbott. You know, I genuinely understand that you're in an unfair situation here, but part of progressivism, in my opinion, is learning to roll with the punches. I think you need to first come to the acceptance that the left no longer holds the zeitgeist. And in order to strengthen the position of the left and the progressives, you need to go out there. You need to treat people who have these opinions with respect, and you need to articulate yourself in a way where you can create cogent arguments without demeaning people. And honestly, this might sound quite harsh from me, but my sort of suggested criticism for you, Dave, at this point, seeing how far down the rabbit hole you've gone, is delete your account and make a new one. Honestly, I really think you should just delete your account or at the very least make a new account. Try to sort of integrate yourself as a fair critic of the sort of anti-social justice community, whilst also criticizing aspects, you know, offering enough for the sort of anti-social justice warriors to listen to you. That's what I do. You know, the reason why I have an audience of people that are considered anti-social justice is because I do criticize things that they see as well, but I also accept that they're not a perfect audience. I criticize that audience myself. I think we get too het up in dealing with these issues. You know, I think I was in a stream with Academic Agent. You know, I was saying that I have good things to say about people like Christy Winters and H-Bomber and Sean and Jen. And he was comparing me to, you know, a Jew in 1930s Nazi Germany, saying that I was basically pretending to myself that everything would turn all right. You know, I'm not that dogmatic in my opinions. I'm nowhere near as dogmatic as people like Agent and Sargon, or even people like Hobbyist that you've sort of gone against. So I don't know why you've decided to make me your enemy. It almost seems like controlled opposition. It almost seems as if you want to self-sabotage by doing this, because I'm one of the few people within this commune, this sort of anti-social justice commune that is willing to have normal, down-to-earth conversations with your kind. We don't have to agree, that's not the point, is, agreement and disagreement. The point is that we're having the discussion and we're letting the ideas stand for both sides to be equally presented within the realm of ideas. Alright. I've been threatened with the release of private info on more than one occasion, including threats towards people close to me. Yeah, that's absolutely fucking disgusting. And I don't know enough about that, but trust me, I'm on your side with regard to that. With regards to your doxing, I don't know how much evidence there is to suggest that Edgy was involved with that, but I know Existential Eagle was, and he's a piece of shit. I want nothing to do with that guy. I've had nothing to do with Existential Eagle. I have nothing to do with him. I don't want to have any kind of conversation with him. He sounds like a retrograde right fucking fruitcake. This was done by people who are still okay within the in-group. Fuck, barely anyone cared about AIU's doxing before he had a spat with Sargon. I had a fucking big problem with AIU's doxing. There's a reason now why AIU is not treated seriously within the communes. And I will say this about AIU, is that, have you noticed that he's not resorted to this any time in the last year now? During this whole ordeal, he has refrained from doing any kind of doxing. All he's done is block people. And you can laugh at him for blocking people, but you have to admit that's far better than doxing someone. I think he has legitimately taken these criticisms on board. It doesn't absolve him of the disgusting behaviour that he did in the past, in the same way that I'm not going to associate with AIU anytime soon. But I think he has sort of realised where he went wrong. And he's still a joke to me, in my opinion. But at least he's been willing to admit, well, he hasn't admitted publicly, but at least his actions have indicated that he's moved past that. Which is something, I guess. It doesn't absolve him, like I said, but it's something. Yet they complain about CNN doing the exact same shit that plenty within their own community do, people they support. What CNN... The thing is, I didn't have a massive issue. I was actually somewhat of a CNN apologist until this whole CNN blackmail thing emerged. Because I honestly thought MSNBC was far worse. I thought CNN did some silly stuff, but I felt kind of sorry for them. I felt they were getting too harsh criticism. But then this blackmail came in. They essentially blackmailed someone for making a meme of them. It's the most pathetic, pedantic thing, especially since we hold them to such a high standard. We hold CNN to a higher standard than someone like Sargon, for example, because CNN is a massive corporation. It's a corporate machine. It should know better because it has multiple minds behind it. Someone like Sargon, I agree, should be held to some accountability. But at the end of the day, he is just one person, in the same way you're just one person. I try to hold you to the same accountability that I hold Sargon. When Sargon does something stupid, I will call him out on it. And I have criticised Sargon on stream. Last night I was criticising Sargon on stream, and we were discussing things on stream. In the same way that I've criticised you in the past. I wasn't overbearing. I wasn't malevolent or callous towards Sargon. In the same way in stream I wasn't malevolent or callous towards you. I treated you both fairly. I wanted to hear your opinions. Who's blamed for the unethical actions? The victims. You were pissing off YouTubers. You didn't hide the information well enough. The thing is, this is about you now. There's a right way to do criticism and there's a wrong way to do criticism, and you need to realise that the current zeitgeist as it stands, as much as you might want to say, oh well that's unfortunate, and I agree that it's unfortunate that the zeitgeist is the way it is, the anti-left zeitgeist is the way that it is that ultimately you need to realise you have an uphill battle. The progressive left have an uphill battle, and in order to get more people in the centre on your side, in order to get more people to believe what you believe in order to sort of convince more people to take you seriously, you need to convince people that you're willing to listen to discourse, you're willing to not misrepresent people, you're willing to not be callous towards the opposition. Because I think it speaks volumes about you if someone criticizes you in a malicious manner, and then you take the high ground, take the moral high ground, there is something to be said about that. I don't blame you for the whole Qatar thing, and to be honest, I didn't want to even get involved in that because it seemed very shaky. I think V handled that situation awfully. That's why I don't associate with V. I think he handled the situation awfully. I think he's too scared to admit that he fucked up. It's a pride thing, in the same way that I think a lot of this is pride from you. You're afraid to admit that you've made a lot of errors of judgment here. You are essentially... It reminds me of Judge Claude Frollo from the Hunchback of Notre Dame movie. Or even better, the priest from the book, the original Victor Hugo book, trying to justify all these things to yourself as if you were somehow in the right. Don't be afraid to criticize yourself. That's one of the best things you can do, to sit down, to really think and say, how have I fucked up? And honestly, I think I've fucked up a lot in how I've addressed people like yourself. I think I've been overly callous on Twitter. I think Twitter is vehicularly a war machine. It does nothing but add fuel to the fire. And I call people out like Tom Bloke and classical liberal, the Wield Goethe's fellow. I call people like that out because they do nothing but fuel it. I attack them because they themselves are cowards. They are bullies, in essence. They have the philosophy of bullies, essentially, because what they do is that they criticize people, they take potshots at people when they know that they aren't exposed, but as soon as they're put in a position where they're exposed, they cower and retreat. They have to avoid it. Say what you will about me, but at least, and me wanting to do streams a lot, I admittedly do want to do streams a lot, but at least I'm willing to converse with people. At least I'm willing to sit down with people I fundamentally disagree with and have respectful disagreements with them. Whether they're on the left or the right. I think that's something that people like Tom Bloke do not help. In the same way that people on the right, like Paul Joseph Watson, don't help. And that's why I hate people like Paul Joseph Watson on the right. I hate these slaves to the ideology. I hate people that encourage people to not be individuals, but slaves to an ideology, slaves to other people's perceptions. That's what these people do, Spino. And this is something that you've fallen victim of. Other people's shitty behaviour is your fault for not couching your criticism in the cuddliest way possible, a one-way street of etiquette. No. The thing is with this is it shows that you have an ability to articulate your arguments coherently. It shows that you can claim a moral high ground. I know it's not fun to play within the zeitgeist, but the only way you're going to get any kind of political momentum, which is what I think you seek, the only way that you're going to be taken seriously by anyone outside of the progressive left, is if you accept and treat people with respect. That's why I have a wide variety of people that follow me. I have less followers than you, sure, but I have people from the alt-right to communists that follow me because I try to treat people fairly on my streams. And okay, I'm a lot more callous on Twitter, and admittedly that's something I need to work on. That is something... I think it is systemically a problem with Twitter, but it is something that I need to avoid. And Nick Goroff was right in criticizing me. That is how you do criticism right, is that you're precise in how you do so. I think Nick Goroff was correct in his criticism of both of us, is that we need to stop politically pot-shotting, and you need to stop thinking that these people like H-Bomber and 21 Logicians are role models, because they're not. They are the antithesis of intelligent political discourse. They might present themselves as intelligent and meaningful conversants, but they're not. And I know you say the same about people like Richard Spencer and Millennial Woes, but at least Richard Spencer and Millennial Woes are willing to come on streams and back up what they believe in. Whether they're right or wrong is irrelevant. It's the fact that they're willing to have the conversation with people. Whereas these people that you're siding with aren't. You know, this is why people are siding more and more with the alt-right, because the alt-right are at least willing to have the conversations. And then people pretending to see both sides act as if there's any validity to blaming that shit on you. You have not handled the situation perfectly, Spino. You have admitted that. No one here has handled this situation perfectly. Sargon hasn't, I haven't, Edgy hasn't, Kraut hasn't, no one has. And you need to come to terms that not only has everyone else not handled the situation perfectly, but you need to have a deep look at yourself, have some self-reflection, have some self-introspection, and realize that you have done something wrong. That is the issue here, Spino. They may accept that you got a raw deal. Yes, you did get a raw deal. I think you did. But I don't think you handled the situation perfectly, and I'm offering, even people like Sturkle and Robin Gething admit that you didn't handle the situation perfectly and there's better ways you could have handled it. The only people that think that you've handled the situation perfectly are the likes of 21 Logician. And he's not a good role model, Spino. And you're probably going to say, oh, well, Ruffian Dick is not a good role model to me, but I don't agree with Ruffian on everything. I have disagreements with Ruffian all the time on my streams. You know, we disagree on a lot of things, me and Ruffian. You know, we can put it beside us because we can respect one another's opinions. Tom Bloke can't respect other people's opinions because he always has to chastise people on his Twitter feed for having different opinions. It's not for their actions necessarily, it's because of their ideology. If someone, like I said, if the roles were reversed, he would not be criticising it. He's a partisan shill, is what I'm trying to say. And that's something I genuinely try to avoid, and I don't want you falling into that trap, Spino. It is genuinely sad that you have fallen further and further down this trap. They may accept you got a raw deal, but won't ever take a fucking stand against shitty behaviour and act like you're equally in the wrong. I've taken a stand against shitty behaviour. I've taken a stand against doxing, for example. I fucking despise doxing. You know, I was on your side during the whole V thing. I think V handled that situation absolutely abysmally. And the thing is, I've not even treated this situation... I treat these situations fairly. I remember when Reese was accused of apparently doxing someone. I looked into the situation. I didn't find anything conclusive, so I have nothing to blame Nightmare Fuel for example. So I at least looked into it to see if there was anything substantial to it, and it turns out there wasn't. You know, V was just casting shit. That's why I don't like V very much. I think he just throws shit around. He's not willing to admit that he's wrong. He's too vain, and he has unwarranted self-importance. Hiring a PI to dig up dirt. Yes, I disagree with that as well. Recording private convos. This was referring to the thing with Kraut. Kraut has apologised for this, and Kraut has deleted the private conversations. And this doesn't just come from him, this also comes from people like Habib. And the reason he was doing so in the first place, as he has told me, is because Edgy Sphinx's friends had apparently threatened to dox him and release private information of him to the public in a Skype call. That's why he started recording Skype calls. Openly lying for an agenda, well, that's quite, vague. Laughing at tragic shootings and rape victims. Everyone has criticised... The people that have not criticised V and Uzulu for that... You know, I have criticised both Uzulu and V for that, and that's why I don't associate with V anymore, is because he's sticking to his guns so much on that. I think Uzulu, deep down, understands that what he was doing was a controversial thing to do. What he was doing was, no doubt, a silly thing to do. And I still have conversations with Uzulu. I still think that he has things to offer to the conversation, unlike a lot of what V has to offer, unfortunately. I don't agree with what Uzulu did at all. You know, Kraut went and apologised. Sargon wasn't even making jokes. I don't associate with Louis Laveau either. I think he's up his own fucking arse, in all honesty. I really think he's one of the most pretentious, self-righteous arseholes out there, from what I've seen of him. You know, I've not had many personal interactions with the guy. It's just that's what I've seen of him. So, you're making these judgments. No one here has specifically defended Louis or... And I know there are people that have specifically defended V as well, but the audience that you're trying to paint, the entire SJW audience that you're trying to paint like this, you know, the people, even the people like that I've started talking to in the private chats that I'm in, you know, they think that V was in the wrong here. The difference is you're making this into a right or wrong kind of thing. You're either with us or against this kind of issue. You're making this into this big ultimatum, and people are forced to choose a side on this, and they invariably choose V because of your past actions, which is very sad. You know, I think it is very sad. Barely anyone will stick up for you. Anyone who would are already outcasts or are just as likely to turn on you instantly if the tide changes. I'm willing to stick up for you when unfair criticism is thrown your way. When you were you know, for example, when Ozjar made his video of him, and I get on with Ozjar now, but I still think that a lot of what I said in that video towards Ozjar was true. I think he was using a broad brush to define social justice, and I think he still disagrees with a lot of what I said in my videos responding to him. I'm willing to stick up for you when there is unfair criticism thrown your way, David. The question is, you're not willing to do the same for me. That's why I don't want to associate with you anymore. You're willing to demean me and put me down. Whereas I'm willing to stick up for you when unjustified criticism is thrown your way. And when justified criticism is thrown your way, I try to articulate it to you. I try to say, look, I think there's some valid points here. I think you need to try and take this on board, or at least offer a cogent reason as to why you're not taking it on board. And I think ultimately your allegiances fall with the likes of people like 21 Logician at this point. You are so keen to defend them and people like Sean and H-Bomber that you don't realise that you are invariably becoming hostile towards people like myself by the way you conduct yourself, the way you approach people like me, and even people like Hobbyists and Republic of Kekistan and Dat No Fact. You know, people who are reasonable people who are willing to hear both sides of the conversation and aren't just going to call you a regressive social justice cuck. In the same way that I'm not calling you that. You know, they are willing to treat you fairly. These are the enemies that you have made now. The people in the centre, this is the worst thing that you could do, is make enemies at the centre. Even most of the fucking retrograde right doesn't do that. You know, they make a few memes here and there, criticising the centre, and I say, yeah, that's not accurate at all. But at the end of the day, it's generally friendly spats that I have with people on the fucking right with this issue. You have decided to make the centre your enemy. Your group has made the centre the enemy, and this is why I have turned against you, Spino. You have made the people that are trying to have rational discourse and trying to understand where people are coming from the enemy. This is what Tom Bloke has done. But piss popular people off? Unforgivable. This is all your fault. It's a dysfunction in you that this group of ideologues hates you. The thing is, if you're criticising people that are popular, and this is something that I've learned through criticising Sargon in the past, is that you need to do it carefully. You know, Nick Goroff is someone that does this well. You know, he does this in a way which he doesn't spurg out about this kind of thing. He does it in an intelligent and articulate way, and people take him more seriously as a result. That's why a lot of people on the progressive left don't go after Nick Goroff. In fact, I think that's why you follow Nick Goroff, is because he does this in such an articulate and intelligent manner. The difference between me and Nick, and you can honestly, I think this speaks, I think this is something that Nick does a lot better than me personally, is that Nick doesn't get involved with this nonsense. Nick is above this nonsense, and admittedly, yeah, that's something that he does better than me, greatly so. And that's something he's offered advice, you know, for me on, to not get involved with these people. It's just, I get involved with these people because I think that these people, like 21 Logician, need to be confronted, because no one is making a good effort, because the retrograde right aren't making a good effort to confront him. You know, I am trying to make an effort to have a conversation with him. That's why I'm offering to have him on a stream. That's why I offer people to come on stream to articulate their opinions, so they have a chance to voice what they want to believe in. And I've had a few people suggest to me that I should ask to be on their streams, to be on their sort of side, because people always like to accuse me of, oh, well, it's just for the views, you're just in it for the views and the likes and all that and the approval. No, I'm willing to appear on other people's channels as well. It's just I don't want to make demands of people to appear on their channel. They have the right to want what they want on their channel. But I am going to criticize you if you don't have a good excuse to want to appear on my channel, if you're just going to avoid any kind of criticism, any kind of... That's why I criticize Christy Winters, is that I'm willing to have a nuanced, reasonable discussion in the same way that I've had with Zexacy and Bronx Blogger on my channel. You know, I'm willing to have that with everyone that I disagree with on Twitter. As long as they treat me with respect, I'm going to treat them with respect. Even Angry Napoleon, when he appeared on my stream, I treated with respect. It's just with Angry Napoleon that I had already posted out the link towards people in my social circles, so they joined the conversation. And Kraut got the link. You know, I gave Kraut the link far earlier, and he joined the conversation and he completely derailed it. And, you know, I'm not 100% on Kraut's side with regards to things. I've had streams where I've argued with Kraut on things, but we can respectfully disagree. I'm sick of this gaslighting. Fuck off with your attitude that your favourite content creators are infallible. They're not. But I don't think you know what gaslighting means. Making lots of enemies doesn't make someone a bad person. Well, it depends on the enemies, doesn't it? Yes, there is an argument to make quality over quantity. You know, I'm sure I have a lot of enemies. I'm sure you have a lot of enemies that are unjustified, in the same way I feel a lot of my enemies are unjustified. But ultimately, I don't think that people like Sargon, I think you need to have meaningful conversation with them instead of treating them like the way you're treating them with your parody accounts. You know, that's not the right way to go about it. And I defended your right to having a parody account because I honestly thought it was funny. You know, I thought that the Hard On for Assad stuff was funny. You know, and I think Sargon took it a bit too seriously. But ultimately, I can understand why he'd be upset with you for doing so. Call me what you like, SJW regressive, make shit up about my personal life, stare long and hard into that abyss. I'm not doing that. The people like Dat No Fact, Hobbyist Contrarian, the people that you're trying to conflate into this equation. You know, okay, there is a retrograde right that is doing this to you, Spino. I understand, and I have defended you from that criticism. This is what pisses me off. I have defended you from that retrograde right criticism. But I am offering you criticism of my own, and people like Dat No Fact and Hobbyist Contrarian, and even people like Jeff Holiday and Nick Goroff have offered you this criticism. And you're painting us as if we're in the same group. That's what pisses us off. That's what makes me angry. That is what has made me turn against you, is because you're treating me as if I'm one of them. In the same way that people like Sean and Jen, and H Bomber Guy, and Dick Coughlin, and 21 Logician, and Christy Winters, and Coherent States are treating me as if I'm one of them, when I'm not. I'm willing to treat these people with a bit more respect, even more so than people like Sargon and Academic Agent are. That's what annoys me, Spino. That is what pisses me off. You've become the same social justice bully as you used to fight for, but with none of the pretense of fighting discrimination. Yes, there is an element of that, which is what I call the retrograde right. I criticise people on the right, and I criticise people within our own skeptic community that get embroiled in this. But not everyone does this. You need to do this by a case-by-case basis. And I'm sorry, painting people like myself and other centrists like this is unfair and uncharitable. That's why I'm pissed off at you, is that you're painting me with the same brush as you're painting the people that I criticise. That's what's pissing me off. That's what's pissing people like Dat No Fact off, is that you're criticising us in the same way that you're criticising how we criticise what we call the retrograde right, how we criticise people like Cernovich and PJW and Gavin McInnes and Lawrence Severn and so on and so forth. Your biggest achievements are legitimizing InfoWars and Rebel Media, a conspiracy news site and a white nationalist propaganda platform. Well, for starters, Rebel Media is not white nationalist. They are retrograde right, but I wouldn't say that they're white nationalist. But yes, I agree that we need to do more in criticizing InfoWars and Rebel Media. That's why I like Nightmare Fuel's work. I think he does a great job in that. Even criticizing people like Dave Rubin and Sargon, I'm not opposed to that in principle. It's just that there's a right way to do it, and there's a wrong way to do it. And to be honest, I don't think... I'm going to tell you something, Spino. I don't think that a lot of people within our commune have done this fairly towards the other side, towards the social justice side. Even people like Sargon have a tendency towards doing this unfairly towards the social justice side. I mean, you've seen his videos in the past about Lacey Green, and yes, he's apologized for them. But he has done this to a lot of people who do have good intentions. I think what Sargon sees himself justified in doing is that the people that treat others like crap, he treats like crap. And that's what I've tried to do as well. If you're going to treat me and people in the centre who want to have a conversation like crap, I'm going to treat you like crap. You've acted as incubators and protectors of the alt-right. Well, that's changing for starters, because Matthew Buddha made a fantastic video. And the reason why I have people on the alt-right on my streams is not only so they can articulate their opinions, so I can present counterpoints, so people can come to their own conclusions about whether or not the alt-right is correct. I might not have the best arguments against the alt-right. I'm not saying that I do. But at least I have the fucking confidence to go out there and confront their ideas. You know, a lot of people in the skeptic community don't do that. And you're trying to paint me and other people that do criticize the alt-right under that brush. Fuck off. Most of the old guard of YouTube atheism is gone. People who were fighting political correctness before you had channels were driven out by you. Cult of Dusty, well, Cult of Dusty is hardly an intellectual powerhouse. He just yells a lot. I mean, I don't dislike the guy, but I think what he mainly devolves into is just yelling and screeching a lot. But Dean Newquist makes parody videos, which are hit and miss. Honestly, the Creationist Cat character is fucking cringe, in my opinion. But I think Vadim himself has the capability to be quite funny sometimes. So he's quite hit and miss. He's more sort of a parody channel. He's not a deep, meaningful thinker. And Thunderfoot, you know, I've got no problem with Thunderfoot. You know, I think he mishandled himself in trying to paint Kraut when he made an apology video, and Sargon as a part of that whole Louis Laveau, V and Uzlu thing. I think that he did not, you know, I don't think that he handled that 100%, but I was sort of mixed on that. You know, I didn't really take one side or the other on that. However, I'm glad. This shit is a house of cards, and I'm thankful I got out while I could. I'll be better off in the long run. No, you won't, Spiner. You actually won't, because you are associating... The only people now that are agreeing with you are the same people that generally agree with the likes of Tom Bloke. You know, you have just become a smear account. That is your legacy on Twitter. And to an extent on YouTube. And I appreciate that you've been making better YouTube videos as of late. And I think this is a fair analysis. I've not called you anything like a SJW or aggressive or any kind of derogative term. I just think you're wrong. And I think the way you've treated me and a few others has been extremely unfair. That's what it boils down to. So you're probably not going to listen to this. Well, you are going to listen to this, but you're not going to heed any kind of advice or take anything of value from this. All you're going to do is probably make some snarky comment on Twitter about it. And if you do, you're going to lose all credibility with me. What little credibility you have left at the moment. But seriously, learn how to socialize with people that you disagree with. Learn of the political zeitgeist. Get perspective on the issues. Do not charge in head first. I don't really know what else to say. I mean, I think this is something that you personally have issues with because of your mental condition, which is understandable. But that's not an excuse to not work on it. I think ultimately this is something that you need to work on.